What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. If you guys are new to the channel, do me a favor and hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, make sure you're not missing any of the awesome content that we have coming out. And I hope you guys are ready for Marvel Comics today, because we are starting off with Venom issue number 1. And this is a story written by Al Ewing and Ram V. Now, you guys have heard me talk about Ram V, especially when it comes to his DC's The Swamp Thing. Arguably one of the best things coming out of DC Comics right now, Ram V is one heck of a writer. Now, this story is picking us up after the events of the King in Black. With Null, the god of all symbiotes, being taken out, Eddie Brock steps up and he becomes the god of all symbiotes. He becomes the King in Black. He is the one sitting on the throne. And because of this, he really has no need to be bonded with Venom anymore. And so what we saw in Venom issue number 200 is Venom bonding with Dylan Brock, Eddie Brock's son. And so we're jumping into this new story arc, we're jumping into this new era where Eddie Brock is doing everything he can to try to protect the entire universe, to try and help people after Null took over entire planets. But being the god of all symbiotes, it comes with its cost. And no one feels that more than Dylan. Now, if you guys are not all caught up on everything going on, be sure to check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It'll get you completely caught up on everything that is happening with Venom and all of the symbiotes. And so with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright gang, so as we dive into issue number 1 of Venom, we're picking up with the military outside of a motel room. And what we see are a crap ton of individuals armed and ready to do some kind of battle. And right now, Dylan is in huge amounts of trouble because he was told not to bond with the symbiote, not to bond with Venom. He is doing everything that he was told not to do by his father. Now, for those that didn't know, when Dylan and Venom came together, when they bonded with each other, you can tell that it's Dylan because he has chains wrapped around his wrist, kind of giving himself an update from what Eddie Brock and Venom were together. But right now, he knows he's in trouble. With helicopters filling the sky, Venom is letting him know that they should be running, that explosion, they both saw it, and they believe that Eddie Brock is currently dead. And this entire military force is coming down on Dylan and Venom. And Dylan, he really wants to stay. He really wants to stay and fight. With everything he's feeling right now, with watching his father just get detonated by the military, Venom is trying to do everything he can to protect Dylan, to let him know that they need to get out of here. They need to protect themselves, they need to save themselves, and figure out what is happening. But that's what picks us up 12 hours ago. And we're picking up 12,000 light years away from Earth. And this is where it all starts. This is how all of this begins. And we're picking up with 4 symbiotes that are drifting through space, not having a host. And as they're traveling through the void of space, something passes through them. This something being a signal, a wavelength, a distress beacon to be more exact. And Eddie Brock has instructed all symbiotes to be on the lookout to listen for these things when they're out in space. And half a galaxy away, Eddie Brock gets the call. And almost instantaneously, as fast as you can have a single thought, Eddie Brock finds himself taking over the symbiote. Because this is what Eddie can do. He can move his consciousness from one symbiote to another simply by thinking it. Now, being the king of symbiotes, he has the ability to move them wherever he wants in the entirety of the universe. And after everything Null did, he is doing everything he can to remedy that and have the universe see the symbiotes as a force of good. But that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of helping people because Null really did mess up the universe. He took over tons of planets, he destroyed tons and tons of planets. And so obviously there are people out there that are looking for their revenge. They're looking to kill any symbiote they find. But Eddie finds himself here with the other symbiotes. Now, we can't just call them symbiotes, so he decides to name them after the Beatles. And that's John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And Eddie Brock has brought his consciousness out here so they can investigate what is going on. Having a ship putting out a distress beacon, there appears to be some kind of pirates in the area that are harming this ship. They have boarded and the crew has not been responding. And so they go in and Eddie Brock tells the other symbiotes, he lets them know that their #1 priority is to make sure everyone gets out alive. And the second priority is to make sure we teach these pirates a lesson. And all of our symbiotes, they comply. They agree with this order. There is no question in any of them. But one of these symbiotes has very red eyes, which is different than any of the other symbiotes. And so obviously there's something wrong with it. Something has compromised this symbiote, the one known as Ringo. And though he complies with the order, we can tell that there is something sinister boiling underneath the surface. And so as Eddie and his symbiotes, they board this ship, they get on board, and at first there are no signs of life. There are no bodies, there's no blood, there's no nothing. And so this is more or less a good thing, because that means the crew has not died yet. It's possible that they were able to get out on the escape pods. And so not seeing any kind of resistance, Eddie makes his way to the command center. Upon arriving there, this is where he meets individuals that are not very happy to see some symbiotes. They immediately start firing her away and saying that this is for Largo 4. Now we can only assume that Largo 4 is a planet that was taken over by symbiotes, possibly even destroyed because of it. But Eddie Brock coming up to them, he can't do anything, he can't tell them that it's okay, he can't tell them that he comes in peace. And at the same time, he doesn't want to, because these guys are pirates. Not only that, they are slavers, having the crew trapped inside of the escape pods. With them locking the escape pods into place, these guys can go absolutely nowhere. And so Eddie Brock does exactly what he said he was going to do. He starts teaching these guys a lesson. Now he does refer to himself as Venom, and I think this is more of a force of habit, because he was bonded to Venom for so many years that I think he's just gotten to a point where he calls himself Venom even though he's not attached to that symbiote. Now that is what picks us up with Dylan Brock. And Dylan, he's been getting in lots and lots of trouble. He's been getting in fights at school, tons of fights. And his teachers, the principal, they're all concerned about his well-being, about why he is acting out in some kind of manner like this, trying to get to the root of the issue, trying to figure out what's going on. They really want to talk to Eddie. But the thing is, Dylan hasn't seen Eddie Brock in at least 2 weeks. And though this was always common beforehand, even before he became the god of all symbiotes, he never really saw his father too often because he was out doing the superhero thing. But now that he has become more or less a god, Dylan is seeing him even less now. And so being dismissed from the principal's office, and he makes his way back home. When he heads outside of the school, that's where he meets Sleeper. Sleeper has been keeping an eye on him, and Sleeper knows everything that's been going on. He can see it all over Dylan's face. He obviously got in a fight. He literally got roughed up. But there's not much for Dylan to talk about. But really what's happening is he is acting out because his father's not around. He is a teenage boy who is left completely alone. His father more or less abandoned him, and he feels guilty for even suggesting that that's the case. Because what can you do when your dad is a god, and he's out there helping the universe? He is helping billions and billions of sentient beings. How could Dylan be so selfish to want to keep his father all to himself? And as Dylan makes his way home, as he goes inside, we look around at the place, and it's obvious that a teenager is living here alone because there's pizza boxes strewn everywhere, there's trash all over the place. This is obviously a teenager's pad. But really, we're seeing Dylan is just alone. And Venom right now, he's out doing his own thing, trying to find out who he is outside of Eddie Brock, outside of Dylan. And though he is currently bonding himself to Dylan every now and then, Venom is also free to go and do his own thing whenever he chooses. Now that's where we pick back up with Eddie Brock. And he is just about finished up wrangling up all of these space pirates, getting them all webbed up and under control. He feels some kind of weird sense. He can feel that something is off. Feeling with his Venom sense, he knows something's about to happen. He knows something is wrong, but he can't figure out what it is. Feeling like he is standing on the edge of a cliff and someone is about to push him off. This is when one of his symbiotes reach out to him, and he hears George's voice. This voice letting him know that something horrible has happened. And so in an instant, his consciousness is transferred over to George. And in that instant, Eddie Brock is an absolute horror because Ringo, the other symbiote, has just slaughtered the entire crew, with them trapped inside of these escape pods. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. It was easy picking. And this symbiote with the glowing red eyes lets Eddie Brock know that he has a message from the future. And he wanted to make sure that Eddie was going to listen to him, letting him know to not get too comfortable on his throne, that soon his throne will be empty, to warn him this is not a threat. This is just telling him what will happen. He will not see it coming. He will not know what day it happens, but he is told that it will happen soon, and it will happen very instantly. And so this is telling him to say his goodbyes, telling him to go to his son, to go to Venom and let them know what's going to happen. He could tell them to run, he could tell them to hide, but no matter what, it will not change the outcome of what will be. And just like that, this symbiote, it disintegrates. Right in front of him, it disappears. Now Eddie recognizes the ship's distress beacon, it is still going off, which means somebody is going to be here eventually. They need to get themselves out of here. They need to hightail it before anybody shows up and sees what happened to the entire crew. Because the last thing they need is more people blaming symbiotes for the death of others. Now the other symbiotes, they ask what happened back there. And Eddie has no real answer. He doesn't understand what happened. He doesn't understand why that happened, believing maybe it was Null, maybe it was Carnage, maybe it's something new. He has absolutely no idea. And that idea, that absolutely terrifies him. And that's what brings us to the Brock residence at 2 a.m. With Eddie Brock coming into the house, he goes to Dylan and tells him that he needs to wake up, that they don't have any time, that he needs to grab a couple things, pack his bag, and they need to get out of here as fast as possible. Eddie telling him that he has absolutely no time to explain this, that he just has to trust him, he needs to listen, and they need to get going. And before Eddie Brock walks out of the room, he asks Dylan where Venom is. And Dylan doesn't know right now because Venom, he's out doing his own thing. With Venom coming and going, he's not really keeping tabs on the whereabouts of him at the time. And so Dylan gets up, he starts quickly trying to pack his bag, trying to hurry up, and that's when he gets a phone call from his father. Answering the phone, it is Eddie Brock, telling him that the individual that is there is an imposter, that that's not really him, that he needs to act calmly, he needs to act swiftly, and he needs to open up the window and shimmy down the drain pipe to get away from these guys, saying that he has no time to explain, telling him to meet him at a hotel room. Now at this point, Dylan doesn't know what to think. He doesn't know who to trust. He doesn't even know if this is actually his father on the other line. But on the phone, his father tells him to don't trust anybody. Don't even trust me. But what you do need to do is get out of there right now. And he reminds him to not draw any attention to himself, to not get in any kind of trouble, and whatever he does, do not bond with any symbiote. And that's what picks us up with Eddie Brock inside the hotel room. And at this point, he has no idea what is going on. He knows that his son may be in danger. It has something to do with symbiotes. Even possibly Venom could be wrapped up in all of this, and that's why he's telling him not to bond with him. And all he can think about is that message that was sent from the future. And that gets him thinking more and more. If this individual was able to send this message from the future, Eddie Brock doesn't see why he can't connect to a symbiote that may be in the past or may be in the future. There shouldn't be any kind of way that time stops him from transferring his consciousness through the hive, no matter where it is in time. Now, for him, it's a real crazy idea to play with, but he starts to concentrate and he focuses on a timeline in the future, and this sends him hurling through this time warp. And what he sees is a bunch of events transpiring. He sees the moment that he dies. He sees the helicopter pilots prioritizing Dylan Brock and Venom. He sees monsters. He sees Kang the Conqueror. He sees a lot of different things and has no idea what any of it means. And he feels like he's flowing through a river that he can't swim in. And so it almost feels like he is drowning, and just like that, he falls out of it. And this makes everything a little bit harder because now he is recognizing that he can travel through time to other symbiotes. And so he has to keep a very tight leash on his mind to make sure that it doesn't wander, because an instant thought will transfer his consciousness to any place, to any time in the entire universe. But right now he has to focus on Dylan, on protecting his son. And that's when he receives a phone call from Dylan. And Eddie Brock tells him that he's sorry, but right now he is in danger. He tries to warn him. He tries to make sure that he stays away, but he is already too late. Dylan Brock showing up on a bus, getting off and heading towards the hotel room. Him and Sleeper are walking towards this hotel. That's when Eddie Brock comes running out of one of the rooms. And in that same instant, we see two Apache helicopters. They come flying in, and they just level it. They take out a whole section of this hotel, and with it, we see Eddie Brock go up in flames, with Sleeper and Dylan being blown back by the concussion. Dylan goes running in to try and save his father, but that's when somebody grabs him. Someone grabs him and tells him that it is already too late. That somebody being Venom, who has been weirdly keeping watch over Dylan this entire time, pretending, wearing a baseball cap, wearing a jacket, trying to kind of blend in, but always being there in the background just in case Dylan needs his help. And so everything plays out. The Apache pilots let us know that the secondary priority has made its arrival on the field, but the boy, Dylan Brock, will be the main priority. They need to capture him. But at this point, Dylan is absolutely furious, watching his father die. With them trying to capture him, with them trying to capture Venom, we see the two of them bond together, and the anger takes over. The revenge takes over, and Venom starts laying waste, grabbing soldiers and throwing them left and right, taking down helicopters, taking down this entire military force. They try to stop him, but nothing is slowing him down. It is absolute pandemonium. But that is how the story of Eddie Brock ended, at least in that instant. Because when he was blown up, his consciousness was transferred, falling through time, moving forward faster and faster, not really knowing where he's going, not knowing the destination of where he might land. But something is pulling him across millions and millions of years. But this doesn't feel like descending into death. This feels like something vastly different. It almost feels like he is coming home and arising outside of this lake. It appears to be a lake full of symbiote, or at least the material that symbiotes are made out of. But this black lake, we see Eddie Brock come crawling out of it, and he hears a voice telling him that he needs to take a moment because he just reconstructed himself from available matter, and that this is the first step in a very, very long road. And that individual introduces himself as Miradeus and lets him know that he is at the furthest end of all that is. And this is his garden. And that is where this issue will end. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. For a first issue, there's a lot of mystery here. You know, Ram V is a great writer when it comes to drawing suspense out, really making you wonder what is happening in the story, where this story is going to lead us. And being God of the symbiotes, it only makes sense that Eddie Brock is able to connect to the hive mind in anywhere, in any place, in any time. Now, obviously, this is very tricky to maneuver. This is not something that is easily done, and he has no idea how to control where he lands when he goes through time. He just died, and his consciousness brought him millions of years into the future at the end of all time. Or at least that's what we're presuming, that's really what it is. Meanwhile, we have Dylan back home, and he is just wreaking havoc on everyone who did this, who attacked them. And we have no idea what their overall goal is. We just know that they want to capture Dylan. to what extent we really don't have an understanding yet. And so for a first issue, I really did enjoy this. It opens up the symbiotes, Dylan, Eddie Brock to a whole new era, and I'm really excited to see where they're gonna go with it, how they're gonna really play this whole story out. And the artwork in this story was just absolutely phenomenal. And so I, for one, cannot wait for some more. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you have not yet, do me a favor, hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, make sure you're not missing any of the awesome content we have coming out. And until the next breakdown.